Hi friends, this is Carlos. How you doing? I'm here in my garage. I wanted to show you a few books that I picked last time I went to Osborne book party. I was so happy to observe that Osborne is been publishing more and more books in Spanish, not necessarily to learn Spanish, but in Spanish. And I was so happy to see that. I see at least like 70 books. Maybe there are way more than that. And any book that I'm gonna talk about right now, it's also has a version in English. So whatever I'm showing you, there's also a version in English. So the first one I want to share with you is Los Contrarios. This is for families who are not necessarily native speakers, because the book, even though this book is 100% in Spanish, is self-explanatory. Because you go ahead and go through the book, and when you fold this piece of paper here, you will find the word arriba, for example, and then abajo. So the context of the picture explains the meaning of the words. For example, we have this one lleno, and then we fold this over and say vacío. So even though probably you don't know what those words mean, by the context and by flipping this, you will understand what each word means. Also, there is a theme um, title here, so that it makes you understand you're at the park, and and then you can understand most of the vocabulary that is there. It is always fun to read something like this with kids and let them like guess what's gonna be the word. And if once you read it once or three times, after reading the book for a few times, you'll be able to let the kid remember or tell you the words. Or you can compete with your your child and say, okay, I forgot how to say mocho, or what's the I mean noche. What's the opposite of noche? Okay, the kid may remember dia. There's a little bit of text here that is really fun. You don't need to understand what the questions say, or you will understand them by the context. So it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's a strong paper. You won't rip it apart. I mean, I know kids sometimes are not careful with this kind of things. They may break them, but I think the materials are strong enough to last for a little bit. So this is Los Contrarios. I love this book for Spanish learners. Another book that I'm in love with. This is my favorite, my treasure found. It's called Cuenta Cuentos. What I've noticed on teaching my classes is that for kids who speak Spanish or understand Spanish but are developing their language, their native language, um, sometimes there's not a chance for them to express, to elaborate sentences. This book triggers that or facilitates that possibility. I've been using wordless books that only have images, so I tell the story, and every time I tell the story, I change characters, I change names, and kids love it. Even though the story is kind of the same all the time, we change little details, and they are fascinated with those changes, because they are actually triggering. They're actually suggesting changes, suggesting names, and they found it really fun. I mean, we've read those books in my classes like 20 times, and we still enjoy them. Well, this is a similar book that I think is even better, because this book has a transitional phrase at the beginning. It's helping kids kind of like start the story, but then the book says, for example, había una vez someone who lived somewhere. And once upon a time, there was someone who lived somewhere. So the kid in the first page or the first picture that we choose the character and where they live, and then here there's some suggestion. There's some questions that suggest, a how does your character, what's the name of your character, how it looks like. So these questions are helping the children or the adult first to put more words, put more sentences on describing the character and stuff like that. And then you go to the next page, and again, there's another transitioning phrase here that is gonna, for example, in this case, one day they climb in A So they choose what they choose the animal or the transportation mean that their character will use. Again, more questions, and then the book keeps going. It's an adventure that happens in certain places with certain people. Suddenly something happens. There's always a transitional phrase at the beginning. This is so important because when children are telling stories and they're just still building their Spanish, they have kind of like problems to find good transitional words. So this book provides that, and then the story continues. It's an adventure, etc. So and it's a long, I would say, a long book. So what fascinates me about this book is that every time you read this book, you can tell this a different story. You can choose different characters. So when it is like, I mean, the possibilities of multiplying that the possibilities multiply themselves, right? Because you can choose a different character. There are 5 options, and there are 5 different options here. So imagine the amount of stories, different stories you can tell by having only this book. I think this book is genius. It's a book that I'm planning on using in my classes. And of course, first I'm gonna be reading it. I'm gonna, as an adult, I'm gonna come up with words, vocabulary. I wanna tell the kids what's the name of this or that. But then the most fun part and what I'm really looking forward is to see kids building up their own story and telling the story to everybody, to his friends, their little sibling, their friends, their little siblings, or to the adults. And this is the kind of book that I will put it. I put a score of 100% for teaching purposes, teaching the language or reinforcing the language. Okay, so I'm gonna just talk about 2 more. This is about El Cuerpo. These books are smaller, but the reason I choose these books is that these books are science books or engineering, and it has some important concepts. But what I really like is that the text is not that is there's not too much text. Even the size of the letters are kind of big, and it tells you in funny ways. That explains to you, for example, how your bones work. This is books in Spanish, of course. There's one in English, and then explains the physics of how your body works. Again, very little text, but really concise and very understandable. I mean, after reading this book, I'm gonna be honest. I learned myself a lot of stuff because because there are things that I didn't know about how our body works, and these illustrations explain really well. For example, here's like there's some machines that are cutting an apple, and how they're explaining how that compares to the action of chewing our food and processing through our esophagus and all that stuff. So this book is it's a science book, but it's the most fun way I would say to read about science, and the information is pretty accurate. I mean, that's another thing I like is relevant information. It's not just like the surface of the the theme that you want the children to understand. And again, these are books that you read over and over again and help them understand how, in this case, your body works. I think there's another one about engineering and about science. There's a lot of other versions. And finally, I wanted to share this one because these books are so beautiful. Um, Again, the reason I choose these books is because this is called Secretos de la Costa, Secrets of the Coast. They are interactive books. That's one thing. The other thing, again, is the text. There's not so much text, but again, there's accurate information about birds or any animal that this book is talking about. And the really fun way is like you put a headlight underneath, and then the children can see what's underneath. I mean, this is a beautiful book. Patricia, my friend, was telling me that her children, probably they're already 10 or 11, have some of these books, and they still like them. and I can see why. This is about typos, and the information that they're providing in the book is pretty accurate. It's really interesting. And again, I found information here that I didn't know, or if I kind of knew, I didn't know some vocabulary in Spanish. I kind of typos for me was something new when I moved to California. All the information that I learned was in English because I never went to a typo in Mexico, or I never went to a typo with the idea of studying what was going on there. But here, the book explains really well. It's brief, but it's really relevant, and in every page the kids will find fun stuff to look at. Look at these beautiful books. So those are some of my picks. As I mentioned, I choose like 25 books. The last party I went to, I may get a couple more, especially for my son. There's some encyclopedia type books with awesome illustrations that I would like him to have access to. And what I like the most now, they have way more titles in Spanish, and I really appreciate that. So I wanted to share that with you. A lot of you have asked me, hey, what do you recommend to do Spanish at home, etc. Well, in addition to listening to music, watching movies in Spanish, etc., well, always there's the option of having a good book. That recommendation I don't need to give because I know everybody knows that. But if you want to find quality and something fun to look at and something really nice to keep in your home for years, these books are just that answer. These are not the books that I personally will give to Goodwill. If I one day need to get rid of these books, I'm gonna pass them over to people who I really appreciate because these are treasures. That's how I see them. And I hope to see more friends on the party today. And if I don't, I'm gonna honestly keep sharing the information and sharing this the quality of these books because people keep asking me, hey, what can I do to do more things for my children to learn Spanish? Well, I'm gonna go into more detail on how to even read a book. What are my recommendations so you can introduce the language and the structure of the language. Well, thanks for listening. Sorry this video went longer than I wish, and I'll be in touch with you. Bye bye.